Hi, welcome to What's Next with Sara, conversations on facing life as it is. Today, I'm honored to be sitting here with Sade Combs from Virginia. Sade is a practicing death doula, and as many of you know, I'm also a practicing death doula, and we're going to talk about what that is, and the challenges and the rewards, because there's plenty of both. And with that, let's just get started. Welcome, Sade.
Welcome. Nice to meet you, and thank you for allowing me to speak on my behalf on what it's like, the process of how it's like of being a death doula, and the opportunities, and kind of the grieving stage as well. A part of that.
That's right. That's right. So tell me, are you in an urban or a city or a country environment, rural, where you
We're
practice?
in the city.
You're in the city. Okay.
Mhm.
I have not had any experience in rural, so I'm just asking that question. And what brought you to this work?
Well, it basically starts with how I was born. My mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when she was 16 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
the tumor mass was about the size of a turkey. So they had to remove all that obstruct from that tumor. So they only left maybe a smidge of a little bit of a one ovary left and had to remove the rest. So years went on and they told her, she wasn't able to have children. And, of course, the doctors were wrong. And then
There
me
you
and my
came.
brother came into the picture. Yeah. So I
Nice.
came basically from like a pebble of an ovary. And the doctors, what they had told her at that time, they said that me and my brother were death by miracle babies. So that's kind of like inspired me to kind of go this route because I went through a lot of spiritual challenges of like figuring out what is it about death that I keep leaning towards to.
Mhm.
And at first, I thought it was being in mortuary school. And I was like, yeah, there's still more that I want to give some more spiritual advice. So I was laying in bed one day, and all of a sudden, I was scrolling on Facebook, and then I saw Death Doula pop up. And I looked at it at first, and I said, I don't know. Let me look more into it. So I looked more into it, and it was saying everything exactly of what I wanted to do. And then the divine has a funny way of reappearing things that you're
Right.
supposed to meant to be.
Right.
And I pondered on it and pondered, and then sure enough, I just started taking that leap of faith, and that's what I ended up doing.
So that's fascinating. So you actually went to mortuary school.
No, I didn't.
You
I
did.
actually
Okay.
went through the phases of, kind of doing a self discovery of figuring out, okay, I do like a lot of things about death, but where is the spiritual support and stuff? Where is the guidance? Where is the transitional phase from the dying patient, the family, and yourself? So
Right.
where did it go to? So
Right.
looking at all the contrary of those two different things, I knew I wanted to be surrounded by death, but I also wanted to bring my spiritual awareness into play.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you find the most challenging about this work?
Um, More importantly is the dying patient because 9 times out of 10, it's scary when we're all going to be put in that position, but it takes a really strong person to really sit next to this person, engage with this person, and for them to understand and just keep in that sacred space of, I know I'm dying,
Mhm.
but I at least have support with me so I can transition to the other side
Right.
because they go through a lot of internal and also mental aspects of, I don't know what's going to happen to me. What's my next step? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? So it's like having that support system, that person that just really comes in as an outsider looking in to kind of help them on that new journey. It helps a lot.
Yes. Yes, it does. It absolutely does. I know for me, um, one of the biggest surprises was to just not be in a hurry. And sometimes I just find that, at the beginning, you walk into a room, you think, okay, nothing's happening, I'm just going to go. But in fact, when you're sitting with the dying, it's things unfold in a way very slowly. And
Yeah.
that's a lesson that I really had to say, okay, you said you're going to be here a half hour. even if they're sleeping, you're going to sit here for a half hour. And sometimes it's the last 5 minutes that somebody wakes up and you have a very meaningful exchange, and then they go back to sleep. And it's
Yeah.
for me, that personally, that was really a strong lesson that surprised me, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
It's,
And
you
those,
know, there's a lot of interesting things, you know, when I was going through the classes and the courses for Death Doula, what really struck like my mindset is to know that even though our physical bodies are still here by the time of death, the spiritual aspects of it will cling to the other side. But when you have a family member or family members come in around the dying patient, you know, the last thing that they hear is the hearing.
yeah,
So when they're hearing, oh, I need you to stay, I want you to stay, why can't you just stay? The actual physical body will literally stay here on this plane, and they
yeah,
will struggle from going to the spiritual side to this side. So in
yes,
a sense, it's like playing tug of war. So basically having somebody come in and kind of not necessarily intervening, but explaining what a soul means and what an earthly body is. There's a
yeah,
lot of different comparisons of you have to allow the divine to make that decision and to make it more easy, because when you're restricting that and telling the dying patient, I need you to stay, they're still going to physically feel all that internal and physical pain that they're going through. When
yeah.
you learn to release, then they can release and their soul is gone.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
that was very, you know, important to know when I was going through the schooling for it.
Did you come from a spiritual background? Were you raised in a spiritual household?
Well, my grandmother was strictly, you know, Christian, you know, all of, you know, going every Sunday growing up. But with me and the way how me and my brother were born, I feel like our spiritual aspects has a lot to do with our culture background. So we
Mhm.
don't just confide to the Christian beliefs. I am more of, I would say, eccentric. So I believe in a lot more different things and being around different people and getting to know different cultures and stuff like that. So I'm more of a, I would say, a spiritual butterfly. I go with something that I feel it resonates with me, then that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that right now, the interest in death doulas is tremendous. The amount of people who are kind of going to take those courses and to learn that work. And we are, as we know, we are coming to a huge population that is going to start dying off, just age-wise. And so I do see that the death doulas have an opportunity to fill a tremendous need. And of course, a lot of those people are single, or where I work, a number of people, you know, their kids are in Arizona, I'm in Minnesota, their daughter's in Florida, you know, even though they may have family members, those family members are not nearby. And
Yeah.
it's also, as I'm sure you found, often people can share things with you that they can't necessarily share with their families. Yeah,
Yeah.
that provides a tremendous need as well, I think. When you're listening with as you said, with a non-clinging or non-judgmental mind, people are able to share, and the subtleties with which they share, I find fascinating. I mean, you could really miss it if you're not really listening.
Yeah, especially if you have a patient that, you know, a lot of time, a lot of people will say, you know, crazy people, they're crazy. No, sometimes if you really listen to the subliminal stuff that they're saying, they're actually speaking some truth to maybe something that you're not hearing or physically seeing.
Thank you.
So a lot of times people will form in these categories as, well, this person has this disorder, or I
Yeah,
don't know what they're talking about or what they're seeing. And everybody has what they would call, I wouldn't say like psychic, like, oh, I know what's going to be next on the TV, but everybody has that type of spiritual awareness within them that they can access. But
yes,
usually closer to death, they can visually see things more like, you know, angelic, people that have passed on,
yeah,
things from the past that they're trying to recalculate in the present moment. But
right.
these are all just memories just being restored before the next phase.
And that's very real, that beings come to see them. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's a little boy in the corner, and it doesn't help the patient to say, oh, they're having an hallucination.
Yes,
I think
because
those are
when you
very,
do that,
yeah,
yeah,
often in the medical field, you'll hear people say, well, they're having hallucinations, and I'm with you. I'm like, no, that is not a hallucination. Yeah, yeah. And I agree with you that that listening part is really, really important. And what I've been finding is, I work with somebody, and the other person working with me is like, well, they're very angry, and it's like, yeah, but that's what's helping her to move. Of course she's angry. She's stuck in this body. She's stuck in this bed. She has no family around her. She's completely dependent on other people. You'd be angry too, and
yeah.
it's that anger that's going to help her move to the next place. And so it's really important for us to face our own anger and to be able to sit with that with people, and to face our own pain so that we can actually sit with people who are in pain, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I noticed
Correct.
that a lot of people, they kind of run from the room because they don't know what to do with all that pain.
Exactly. And it's hard when you have, especially when you have a dying patient and then you have a bunch of family members and they come in and they kind of bring a chaos environment. That's when, as a family or as a unit, you would think towards a dying patient, allow them to have that freedom of space without anger, hostility, because it is a change. It's a change for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But most importantly, to respect the dying individual, it's important to have that sacred space for them while they're going through that transition.
Yeah.
Instead of just, let me get these affairs in order, because they can hear all that. They can sense energy, so they
Mhm,
know when there's something going on and it's something not right, and there's something that it's out of their control,
mhm, mhm,
because
mhm.
they start allowing themselves to feel self pity of, I can't do this for myself anymore. I have to depend on this person. I have to do that. And it's sad, for people to think like that, but we're all going to go through that. But it's good to have that support system that is there from maybe 6 months to their death or just a few weeks prior.
Yeah,
It's good to have that support.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I could not agree with you more. Yeah. So what is the most interesting part of this work for you? Maybe you've already said it, but let me hear you say it.
Um, you never know what type of mental capacity you're going to be with a dying patient. You never know if this person is, like you just said, going to be angry, they're going to be sad, they're going to be nonverbal. So
Mhm.
it's kind of learning to communicate in a way where you kind of have to think outside the box.
Yeah,
So when you kind of look at a patient and you're observing them and you've been around them long enough, telltale signs. Okay, well, if so and so doesn't want to do this without speaking verbally, then it kind of gives an indicator of they know exactly what I'm going through, even if it's me not verbally saying anything. And it's good to build that trust and connection with them because,
right.
and I feel like in a sense, after we go to the other side, we never know when we're in the realms where it's like this person's like, "Do you remember me? Because you helped me," So
I'm
it's
sure
kind
they
of
do.
like a way of doing a good thing in the world. Somebody that is a earthbound person but has such angelic ways about themselves. I think that's the most best gift that you can ask for.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I do think it's definitely a karmic relationship, let's say, whether you're building karma or clearing karma when you work with somebody. And I do take that very seriously. I'm with you on that. Um, yeah, we don't know what the agreements are, sort of free birth or psychically, or however you want to call that. There's a lot of
Mm.
language for that. And early on, I had a really amazing experience with this man. He was, not verbal, and I was in training, and I was kind of shadowing this woman around. And I just, I just felt like he was really not all here. He was already starting to travel, come back and forth. And, so one day he's sitting in his wheelchair and I'm like, oh, you're not going to eat? And he sort of looked at me and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm new at this. And we both kind of were able to laugh, because for those of you who don't know, people stop eating. They lose interest in
Yep.
food. And it was the most beautiful connected moment for me to see that guy still there, even though he's sort of traveling back and forth. And he died 2 days later, it was, you do have those really, really meaningful interactions, even if they're for a moment. And
Yep.
I think that's like what you're saying is for the person to feel heard, for the person to feel seen, for the person to be acknowledged exactly where they are. It doesn't help for us to go in and, have our agenda of what we want them to do. I see that a lot. And I think it's really important for us as doulas to follow their lead, not to go in and what we think they should be doing.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we all follow like a different pathway or discovery for the patients. And, just like they have for birthing doulas, it's the same thing. You're coaching birth, you're coaching life.
Yeah.
And you also need to learn to coach death as well and do it at its own tempo because
Yes.
each patient is different. Each patient goes through different scenarios, opinions, anger, hostility, sadness. They go through all these emotions,
Yes.
just like you would birthing a baby. It's the
Right.
same thing. So
Right.
it's good to have those life and death perspective of both things need to be appreciated because
Yes.
what's going on now in the world where, so people are just so quick of, oh, put them in a casket. It's done.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to death being a sacred event to where it's like family was really a unit where they connected with not just, each other, but with the earth, with the divine, and make it more of a practical situation where it's like, I know their spirit is gone and I'm okay with that. Versus now it's, oh, let me think of the financial aspects. Yes, that's part of it. But to reinvent that, I think us death doulas are doing a major shake-up change in the world to see things in a different perspective about death and not make it seem like it's a morbid conversation or it's taboo. Anything can be taboo.
Right.
But if you're not willing to understand it for what it is, then you have no right.
It is interesting, grandma used to be in the bedroom dying, right? And everybody would be in the house and it was just a part of the family. And now people are, I work in a facility, end of life facility. Where do you work? Or how
Right
do you?
now, I'm working in a medical supply place, and basically what I do is I construct and build medical kits, and they ship off nationwide.
Oh, where do you
But
do your doula work?
so on the side, I'm going to be working at a hospital, Bon Secours Hospital, and
Okay.
also there is another hospice center as well. So I'm kind of getting experience
Good.
a lot of places.
Good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, because we went from it just being a part of every day-to-day life to now it is something very separated, and people are very nervous about that conversation about death, and not that many people think about it. And I think it's really important to start thinking about it at a pretty young age because it can really affect the trajectory of your life. When you realize this is it, I've got this 60, 80 years, 40 years, whatever you have, like, what do I want to have had happen in those years? You start to think differently, I think, than when you just think you're going to be here for eternity and you never think about the end and you never think about getting old or dying it can really change your perspective. Yeah, absolutely.
I like the advice of, and I see it sometimes here and there, and it says that this physical body, this flesh is like the car. You operate the car, but inside the car, that's where everything is eternal, can keep going on, can keep striving for new wisdom and knowledge and higher planes. And I like a lot of people, they need to separate that of, stop thinking you're going to be here for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's not going to work.
Right.
You
Right.
know, we're gonna be born and we're gonna die. That's the cycle of life, and that's why rebirth can mean many things, or resurrection can mean many things, because you can be rebirthed in a new way of thinking, but
Right.
you can resurrect in a new soul, and a new beginning, and a new life.
So what do you do, or if you've had experience with this? I find this a challenge. Somebody, I get assigned to somebody, and they're kind of closed down, and they have no sort of religious reference or spiritual reference. And that can be really challenging to sit with somebody like that. And have you had that experience, or?
No, but I've had experience, and this is crazy, with people that, are considered, atheists,
Mhm.
in their opinions of not having a higher being or anything like that. It's kind of like you were born here and you're here.
Right.
Being around, I would say, individuals like that, that's their perspective of how they feel, and it shouldn't be a judgmental aspect, because depending on the background, how we were raised, somebody might have been raised in a strict religious base of, you're going to hell if you're doing this, you're not doing this right by the book. If you're having that dogmatic mentality, you're going to grow up or being around people that are just going to be like, no, I don't believe in no such thing, because I've been told if I do this, if I go down this street, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, with a person or individuals like that, you really do have to think outside the box without projecting any type of religion or spirituality, because eventually, if you kind of get to the roots of the issue of why maybe the person is the way they are, you can start understanding of, okay, I understand now why you're like this. It's
Yeah.
not just because of A, B, C, D. It could be just as easy as a childhood trauma that
Yeah.
just manifested in adulthood, and it never got changed and never got fixed. It was just there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is kind of challenging being with somebody like that, but it's just as much as challenging being with somebody that's schizophrenic too as well.
Yeah, and they're as deserving as of compassion as anybody, right? I mean, it's I guess my question becomes, the challenges for us, like where do we find the way in? Where do we find the connection with that person, and a good word without projecting all of our beliefs onto them? And I think obviously that's really important, and that's nice the way you phrase that. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, what would you say to anyone who's thinking about moving into this work?
Get ready. There are lots of,
That's a,
it's not just about the grief. There's a lot of things, I would say, that as a divine feminine or divine masculine, they will see things in a new perspective. You
Mhm.
will see death in a new perspective. You'll see people in a new perspective. You'll
Yeah,
be able to integrate and travel and get to meet new people and different experiences. And then one day you're sitting here on the couch and you're thinking, oh, that's never going to be me. Then when you actually take that leap of faith and actually do it, you'll be surprised how many lives and peoples and families that you have touched along the way. And
yeah,
that, I feel like, is the most richest feeling that you can feel, is knowing that somebody has heard you from, whether it's from overseas or whatever, and
yeah,
they're like, wow, this person can do it. Then I can start doing the same thing, just maybe in my own authentic way.
yeah, yeah. That's a very nice answer. And I think, I kind of came to it because of, I don't know if I said this out loud. So I'm a meditation energy teacher. And I came to it because I, I thought it would deepen my practice of being able to listen and to be with people. And one of the biggest fears I came up against was like, a dead body. And I think that's really real. But as you begin to sit with people, it just changes, it just changes inside of you. And like you say, it's a very humble experience. It's an awe experience. I think, I don't know if that I'll ever be afraid of death. I can see that sometimes I might not want to go because you love people here. I get that. But when you see people and the beings that come to them, you know, you just can't deny that there must be something else, that some mystery that we don't know what it is.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's very, very humbling is the word I would use. Yeah,
Because,
interesting.
everybody has their own opinions and thoughts of the matter. But I think, how are we able to physically talk? How are we able to physically walk? How are we able to use the bathroom, to eat, to drink, to sleep? How are we able to do that? What is running through our veins that is allowing us to interact with one another? A lot of people call it prayer, magic, whatever people may think. We're all celestial if you really think about it. We all have energy. We all have blood. We all have things that correspond of the brain will signal certain things in the body. That's all manifestations of the creator, or whatever you would like to call. It's a manifestation of life. So to, say that you're not, for people that say they're not meant to be here, they are. They are meant to be here, whether it's for a short period contract or a long period contract. Either way, we are literally the inflictions of the creator. And to experience all a humanly experience, it's absolutely amazing to experience it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to get too in that direction here, because I know that makes people nervous, but if you allow yourself to really think about it, it is miraculous that we're here. It is miraculous that you have this life, like all the things that came together to make that happen, to put you here at this time is, I mean, it's miraculous. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Very nice. I don't know, anything that you think you want to add to the conversation right now?
Yes, for like certain, people that, haven't really full blown experienced death as itself, actually visibly seen it, and the time frames of how it happens. A lot of times some families, they don't understand about when they are actually dying, that they do, produce the bowels movements, that's involuntary. A lot of families, they don't know about that. So it's good to have those awarenesses when that time comes, to know the telltale signs of the body really physically transitioning to the other side.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of families, they don't know, they just kind of have somebody come in and they pronounce them, that they're deceased and their time. You don't visually get to see it, because to other people it's a lot, to see a family member that, going through the detoxing everything physically out the body, So it's good to kind of have that awareness on what it's going to be like leading up to those couple of days, minutes, hours, because it can be very challenging and it can be very heavy on the soul to visually see something like that. But it's good to have more awareness of leading up to death and what it really looks like.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, sometimes just a really gentle, this is normal, this is what happens to people, to the family, can go a long way, because as you say, they're kind of in the room and nobody's kind of letting them know the process of what's happening. And I think that also informs the family of like, okay, maybe there's not a lot of time. Maybe I do want to say something. Maybe I do want to sing that song. Maybe I do want to sit here and hold their hand for a little bit, because it lets them know that it is progressing. Sometimes it can seem like you're sitting there for a long time, months, and nothing's happening. And then very quickly things start to shift. And if you're really paying attention, which it sounds like you do, you notice those shifts, and they can be very subtle. And a lot of people around can miss them, but if you're really listening, like you said, the patient is telling you everything if you're actually listening. And I find, for me, that's a very fascinating part of the process. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So you did touch on grief. Are you talking about your own grief that you feel, or what is the grief when you mention that?
Grief could be your own. That's why it's always good to also have self-care when going through and visually seeing, a patient dying. You can build that connection with them as just as easy as a stranger on the street.
Yeah,
And sometimes your own grief, it comes with the process of being a death doula,
yeah,
but also the grief of seeing the family members going through the transition stage. And
yeah.
grief is like the last powerful moment that we can experience on this earth,
Mm,
this grief, because that's our last cry of unconditional love that it's going to take time to heal. It's
yeah,
going to take time for the family to heal. And it's up to us to figure out a way of how can we cope best with grief, because grief, there's no time limit. It can be years
right,
for somebody to say that they're fully done grieving, but even then the grieving never stops. So
right.
it's good to have a good support system to where grief can be accepted in many ways, whether it's some people when they grieve they don't talk, some people they're angry, and it's good to know everybody's kind of grief stages so
And
we
Lang,
can all kind of come together in language. Yes.
yeah, no, that's a very good point. I actually teach classes on what we call psychic boundaries for caretakers, because a lot of times it's our own emotions that are getting triggered by the situation. And so it behooves us to really be paying attention to our own emotions and to not be sort of inflicting them on the family or on the room. And I find that oftentimes that can happen. And that's part of what exhausts people, and it wears them out because they're sort of running all the emotions for the whole family through their system, as opposed to being there as a support to encourage them to run their own emotions. I don't know if that came out very well, but um,
No,
I think that's a really key part of this work as well. Yeah,
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 making space, setting boundaries, because it's hard when you're, a very empathic person and you're like a sponge and you absorb everything. So you really
yes.
have to, most people they pray. I personally I meditate, so I know where I'm grounded in a state of mind to where it's like, yes, I know you have this going on, but I also need to respect myself in these boundaries to where I know I can absorb anything. I can absorb this, and then I will sit here and think for 2 weeks, why am I sad? Because I didn't
Yes.
learn to block out certain emotions and not let it inflict me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Wow. Well, I feel like we could have a whole lot of conversations. I'm really, really pleased to meet you. Um,
Yes,
and I look forward to hearing more about your journey as it progresses. And for me personally, I'm interested to have these conversations. So I hope that we'll talk again. And
yes,
I know that you're going to be a great asset to people. I can just feel that. And you've got such a beautiful, big perspective. And I think sometimes not everyone has that. And I think you've expressed that really well. So thank you for that. Yeah. Anything
you
in closing? What's next for Sade?
to
That's
get
always,
this book to get this book published.
you've got a book. Well, you didn't even mention that. Tell us about your book.
Um, this book literally has been blood, sweat, and tears. It's been torn. It's been, I don't know if I should put this in the book. I don't know if I should do this. Will people like my work? Will it be accepted? So
Mm,
yes, I'm going through the transition of finally starting to get the book into play and getting it published, and it's a lot of work in this tiny little head up here.
And is the book about being a death doula, or what is the book about?
It's actually about a lot of experiences that I personally went through, but also say if I met somebody and they just really intrigued me without, putting their names, I always kind of put them in a third party situation to where it's like I speak on that experience with that person, but without disclosing their name.
Nice.
So the book is called Devotion and Resurrection.
Mhm.
So it's about a lot of things as a single parent that me and my children have been through.
Yeah.
and the resurrection of the new self that I made.
Beautiful, beautiful, wonderful. Well, we'll look forward to that, and we're definitely gonna have to talk again when that's going, so we can help you get some publicity for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm honored, and I really appreciate your time and your words and your experiences. And I look forward to meeting again, Sade.
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.